The first time Mr. Harrington saw my fingers on his daughter's neck, he thought I was trying to hurt her. The man came in hot, like a storm breaking glass. Grabbed my wrist, pushed me into the crib rail and barked, "Get your hands off my child," and before I could finish saying, "Please listen, the body remembers." Zara's little mouth shaped a sound she had never made for anyone, Lee soft as a moth touching light, and Nova, who never lifted her head without help, planted her palms and leaned toward me like her body had just remembered the map back to itself. That was the moment the House of Silence cracked. And yeah, that happened. I wore a gray uniform and kept my voice low because money gets nervous when care doesn't ask permission. I told him I used to be a pediatric therapist, that a father with more connections than truth had buried my license, that I wasn't playing doctor. I was waking muscle memory where it sleeps. He didn't buy it. Not then he left the room, angry and shaking, and I sat on the floor, pressing a towel to my shoulder. Logging. What happened, like I always do. Zara vocalized with light cue. Nova initiated trunk forward. No distress. Presence later that night, I knew he found the audio files because when a man like that sits alone with portraits of people who never had to eggs for belief, he clicks through every log, trying to prove you wrong. And instead, he hears his girls reaching through the quiet for anyone who will stay. Morning came, and he was different coat still on, no speech about boundaries or liability. Just a man dropping onto a rug he hadn't noticed in years and saying, "Teach me how to stay." So we opened the curtains, lowered the rails, put books where their eyes could find color. A tiny speaker on the dresser. A children's xylophone by the mat, heartbeat, rhythm, 3 notes of a lullaby, breath traveling to vowel hand, traveling to knee, my palms, listening more than they moved. The girls answering in inches, not miles, and every time he looked at me like he was waiting for fireworks, I said the same thing. It's not magic, it's memory. We needed a second opinion who didn't talk to parents like problems, so Dr. Lily Ortega drove in from Portland Blazer on shoes off. She sat cross-legged on the floor like a human being, watched without performing expertise, and finally nodded. They're initiating, not just mirroring. Keep doing what you're doing. And the house exhaled like it had been bracing for an impact that never came. We could have stayed hidden, filed neat updates, waited for permission that usually arrives after the miracle and claims it as its own. But I told him people don't believe PDFs. They believe faces, so we called Nora Pike, the local reporter, who doesn't hunt tears with a fork. We sat in the garden with the soft kind of sun that makes you forgive a place for being expensive. Zara and Nova in their white chairs between us. Nora asked what changed. Cole swallowed something heavy and said, "Hope." She asked if I was licensed. I said not anymore. Told the truth, not the pretty version. And then I tapped those 3 notes. Zara turned to me and said my name, clear as a street bell. Lee. The camera operator whispered a prayer. Nova lifted her left hand and set it on her knee, wobbly but proud. The clip blew up the way truth does when it finally gets a microphone. Parents wrote at 2 a.m. Therapists from little towns sent me notes. They were scared to sign, and you could feel the good arriving along with the kind of trouble that hates it when the room wakes up. The first letter slid under the door like we were back in 8th grade, no return address, 1 line, and a red raven stamped in the corner. You don't know the full story, Dup. Now we checked the cameras and learned the feed had been looped for exactly 38 minutes. 2 nights earlier, someone walked the halls like they owned the blueprints, and at 2:14 a.m., the East Wing, where Cole kept Elena's archives, went bright, then black. I was already awake, rocking Nova through a bad dream. Focus showed up. Instead of panic, towels, blankets, feet on cold floor. We got everyone out and watched a decade of a woman's careful notes turned to wet ash at sunrise. Cole stood barefoot in the soot, holding half a photo of Elena with the girls, newborn, tiny, and he looked at me like a man who finally met a fire he couldn't buy his way past. That afternoon, he went live from the nursery. No makeup, no lawyers, just a father with a crack in his voice saying, "They tried to scorch the truth. Truth doesn't char. We rebuild 1 million people watched. And more importantly, the right one did, because a scientist named Dr. Amara Wynn showed up with a hard drive she carried like a newborn inside, were Elena's original notes, and Amara's data, not degeneration. Latency, not gone. Locked. If those words don't shake you, maybe you've never hung your life on a diagnosis," we cried. Then we went back to work. The smear came fast, like a summer storm. Fake emails, fake trades, fake friends on the internet saying I was a con, saying the girls were props. Pictures from my past held up like a verdict, and then 2 plainclothes officers at the county health center asking me to come in for questioning about unlicensed practice that might have harmed minors. I didn't break, I breathed, because fear is a leash, and I don't wear one now. 20 minutes later. Cole walked into the precinct with a lawyer, a publicist I did not ask for, and Congressman Marcus Dean, who I absolutely did. "We are doing this in the open." Marcus said no quiet charges against the woman whose hands gave 2 children back their voices. An hour later, I stepped outside into a crowd that looked like America does when it remembers itself. Teachers, warehouse guys still in their vests, grandmothers with eyes that don't miss a thing. I told them I'm not the story the children are, and for a second, the internet lost its appetite for lies. The night after the fire, we found a sealed thumb drive under a porch planter on it. A video of Elena 3 days before her car went off a logging road thinner than her photos. Eyes on fire saying, "If I publish before the board signs off, I'll lose everything. If I wait, they'll bury it. God help me, I think they already have." We drove out to the old water tower she loved and opened a wooden box Cole found behind the winter quilts, field journals, a letter he hadn't been able to read, 4 words on the front in her hand. For the thaw inside, she wrote, "They aren't broken, they're waiting, be the warm front." So we kept showing up, kept logging, kept touching, where silence had built a nest. And when the state oversight panel called, we said yes. Beige walls, bad coffee cameras. Anyway, Dr. Victor Hale on the left, with a tie that looked expensive enough to say permanent, without moving his mouth. Cole spoke first, not like a CEO, like a man who learned how to say, "I was wrong," without choking on it. He told them about the logs and the garden, and the ash he still found in his cuticles. I tried to buy answers. Turns out you can't buy belief. Then I spoke. I told them I was licensed once and lost it to a settlement that kept a powerful man comfortable, that I kept the skill even when I lost the paper, that these girls didn't need pity, they needed presence. Hale smiled the slow smile of someone setting a trap with respect. "Ms. Grant, aren't you projecting meaning onto reflexes?" I told him, "You don't need credentials to listen." "Doctor, you need humility." The girls weren't performing for me. They were remembering themselves. The room went still, the way a heart does when it hears a truth it didn't plan on. We submitted Elena's originals, Amara's data chain of custody. Clean 3 specialists signed off the chair, asked whether there were any further witnesses. A side door opened. A woman in a blue scarf walked in like a person who had decided not to hide anymore. Elena, alive, the air left the room. She told them about the pressure to retract the staged accident, the safe house she never called safe. Then she placed a briefcase on the table and slid the reckoning file across names, edits, emails where hope got sanded down into hopeless no soundtrack, just pens stopping, and a system that loves the word irreversible taking a step back. Findings take time, but the draft resolution hit the table before we left. Independent review of neurodiagnoses, statewide, transparent standards. A path for me to be reinstated that did not require me to confess to a lie. Cole sold the biotech shares he'd used like a blanket and funded a nonprofit with the only name that made sense. Give them voice. We trained parents in living rooms that will never be on a magazine cover. Zara learned light, and Book Nova made Duh her favorite. And one afternoon under the water tower, Zara spelled my name with foam letters. A. She looked up and whispered, Lee, like a secret and a promise. I tried not to cry, failed, laughed anyway, because joy is allowed to be messy, you know what I mean. If you want the clean ending, this is not that story. The red raven showed up again on a manila envelope tucked into the porch swing. You won this round, stay in your lane or the next fire won't miss. We tightened the perimeter, and we refused to lock the front door of our lives, because fear will take everything you give it, and still ask for the spare key. Nora aired a piece called The House That Started. Listening, people called it propaganda, people called it overdue. Folks fought in the comments we made. Dinner cut strawberries argued about screen time. And when the fog crawled down the hill like it was practicing an old trick, I stood at the window and remembered the first time my name broke the air. A father lowering himself onto a rug and asking me to teach him how to stay a woman in a blue scarf, walking through a beige door, and two little girls who were never broken, just waiting for someone to invite them back to themselves. So tell me what you think was the system being careful or protecting itself. Have you ever been told you were irreversible and then proved somebody wrong? Drop your city, share your story, push back if you disagree, and if you believe presence is a kind of medicine that should never be rationed, type listen so the next person who needs that word can find it.